Love is supposed to feel safe. It's supposed to be warm, comforting, and full of hope. But sometimes, behind closed doors, love can slowly turn into something dark, dangerous, and deadly. This is the story of how a relationship that once felt like a dream became a nightmare, one that no one saw coming, and one that ended in tragedy. It started like most love stories do. Two people met, connected instantly, and felt like they had finally found the one. Friends said they were perfect together. Their social media was filled with smiling photos, romantic captions, and promises of forever. To the outside world, they looked like the definition of true love. But what people didn't see was how quickly the cracks began to form beneath the surface. At first, the changes were small, almost invisible. The caring texts turned into constant check-ins. The sweet concern slowly became control. Where are you? Who are you with? Why didn't you reply? At first, it felt like attention. It felt like someone cared deeply, but over time, the love started to feel heavy, like a weight that never lifted. Arguments became more frequent. What used to be simple disagreements turned into explosive fights. Words were no longer gentle, they were sharp, meant to hurt. Apologies would follow along with promises that it would never happen again, and for a while, things would feel normal, almost perfect, but the calm never lasted. The jealousy grew stronger. Every friend became a threat. Every smile given to someone else became a reason to fight. Slowly, one partner began to isolate the other from friends and family. Phone calls went unanswered, messages were ignored. The person who once laughed freely now felt trapped, walking on eggshells, afraid to say the wrong thing. Fear replaced love. The house that once felt like home now felt like a prison. Every sound, every movement felt tense. The victims started believing the lies, believing that the abuse was their fault, that maybe they deserved it, that leaving would only make things worse. They told themselves it was just a phase, that love could fix everything. But love cannot fix violence. The breaking point came one night after another heated argument. Voices were raised. Accusations filled the room. The air felt heavy, charged with anger and pain. What started as words quickly turned physical. In a moment of uncontrollable rage, the line was crossed, one that could never be undone. When the silence finally fell, it wasn't peaceful. It was the silence of shock, regret, and horror. The person who once said, "I love you," now stood over the one they claimed to care about, realizing that love had turned deadly. And by the time the truth came out, it was already too late. The morning after felt unreal, like the world was moving normally while time had stopped inside that house. Sunlight slipped through the curtains, touching the walls that had witnessed everything, but nothing felt alive anymore. The weight of what had happened began to sink in. Panic set in. Regret followed. But regret cannot erase a crime. Sirens eventually cut through the silence, growing louder with every second. Neighbors watched as police cars lined the street, their flashing lights reflecting off windows and doors. The truth that had been hidden behind smiles and closed doors was now exposed for everyone to see. What once looked like a perfect relationship was now a crime scene. Friends and family were left in shock. They replayed every memory, every conversation, searching for signs they had missed. Some remembered moments when the victim seemed distant or quiet. Others recalled jokes that now felt painful and wrong. Everyone asked the same question: how did we not see this coming? The person responsible was taken away in handcuffs, their face empty, their future destroyed in a single night. The love they once spoke about had vanished, replaced by a lifetime of guilt, consequences, and regret. A moment of anger had changed everything forever. News spread quickly. Headlines used words like unthinkable, tragic, and senseless. Strangers debated the story, not knowing the people behind the names, not understanding the fear that grew slowly, quietly over time. To them, it was just another headline. To the families, it was the end of a world. The victims' loved ones struggled to accept the loss. Birthdays passed, holidays felt empty. The places they once shared now felt painful to visit. Grief became a shadow that followed them everywhere, a reminder of a life stolen too soon. This story is not just about one couple. It is about the warning signs we ignore, the voices that go unheard, and the belief that love alone can fix everything. It is a reminder that real love never hurts, never controls, and never destroys. If you ever feel afraid in a relationship, if you feel trapped, controlled, or unsafe, know this: you are not alone, and help is always available. Speaking up can save a life, maybe even your own. Because when love turns deadly, it leaves behind only pain, silence, and a lesson the world cannot afford to ignore. But the story does not truly end with flashing lights, courtrooms, or prison walls. It continues in the hearts of those left behind, in the empty spaces where laughter once lived, and in the quiet moments when memories come rushing back without warning. Loss does not fade with time, it changes shape, learning how to exist alongside everyday life. The family tried to move forward, but every step felt heavy. There were days when they could barely get out of bed, and nights when sleep never came. They kept replaying the past, wondering if one different choice, one honest conversation, or one moment of courage could have changed everything. Guilt became their silent companion, even though they were never to blame. Friends struggled too. Some were angry, some felt helpless, others promised themselves they would never ignore the signs again. They learned that abuse is not always loud. Sometimes it hides behind charm, smiles, and perfect photos. Sometimes it grows quietly, feeding on fear and silence until it explodes. The community began to talk, support groups were formed, stories were shared. People who had been suffering in silence finally found the courage to speak. The tragedy became a wake-up call, a painful reminder that love should never require you to shrink, to suffer, or to stay silent. Slowly, the pain turned into purpose. The victim's name became a symbol of awareness, a reminder that one life lost is one too many. Their story now stands as a warning, but also as hope, for change, for protection, for a future where love is safe. Because real love is not control. Real love is not fear. Real love is not violence. And if even one person finds the strength to leave, to ask for help, or to choose safety because of this story, then their voice will live on forever. Time moved on, but the memory of that night never truly faded. It lingered in the quiet corners of people's lives, in the empty chair at family dinners, in the songs that used to make them smile, in the places that now felt too painful to visit. Healing was not a straight line. Some days felt strong, other days felt unbearable. But slowly, the weight began to shift from unbearable grief to gentle remembrance. The family chose to honor the victim not through silence, but through action. They spoke at schools, community centers, and online, sharing the truth about what really happens behind closed doors. They wanted others to recognize the signs early, before love could turn into fear, and before fear could turn into tragedy. Their message was simple: no one deserves to live in pain. People started listening. Survivors found the courage to step forward and share their own stories. Some left dangerous relationships. Some reached out for help for the first time. The ripple effect of one voice became many, and the silence that once protected abuse began to break. The world may never know how many lives were saved because of this story, but every person who chooses safety, who chooses to walk away from violence, carries a piece of that legacy forward. Love should lift you up, not tear you down. It should make you feel safe, not afraid. And though the story began with darkness, it now ends with light. hope that the cycle can be broken, hope that awareness can change lives, and hope that one day no one will have to experience what happens when love turns deadly. Years passed and the world kept moving, but for those who lived this story, time would always be divided into two parts. Before the love, before the fear, before the night that changed everything. And after, the long road of healing, remembering, and learning to live again. The family learned to carry their pain in a new way. They spoke the victim's name with pride instead of only tears. They celebrated the life that was lived, not just the way it ended. In doing so, they found strength they never knew they had. Their grief became a quiet kind of courage. In communities far away, people who heard this story started looking at their own relationships differently. They paid closer attention to the signs. They checked in on friends who seemed distant. They realized that love should never come with fear, silence, or bruises hidden under smiles. This is why these stories must be told, not to spread sadness, but to spread awareness. Because behind every headline is a human life full of dreams, laughter, and hope that deserved a future. If you remember one thing from this story, let it be this: love should never hurt. Love should never control. Love should never destroy. And if you ever feel unsafe, reach out, speak up, and choose yourself. Because even in the darkest stories, there is still a chance to protect another life, and that is how we make sure love never turns deadly again. And so, the story closes, not with silence, but with a promise. A promise that the truth will keep being told. A promise that the warning signs will no longer be ignored. A promise that love will be redefined, not as control, not as fear, but as safety, respect, and peace. Every person who hears this story becomes a part of that promise. Every conversation started, every life protected, every brave step away from danger is proof that change is possible. Tragedy may have written the first chapters, but awareness writes the ending. Some stories break hearts. This one is meant to open eyes. Because when we choose to protect one another, to listen, and to speak up, love no longer has the power to turn deadly.